On this episode, we talk with John Englander about his live storytelling event, Bombyx.
So if you want to learn more about Bangkok's increasingly dynamic live events scene, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, you got the Bangkok Podcast in your ears. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who followed a friend to Thailand in 2001, and when he went back home, I stayed to carry on his legacy of naps and snack times.
Nice. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 18 years ago, fell in love with the great stories of this great city, and never left.
Right on. All right, before we start, a huge, big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. And for more intro on how you can become a patron, just head to the support page on bangkokpodcast.com.
Yeah, and one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored, and we really mean that, bonus episode every week where we talk about current events in Thailand and basically whatever else comes into our minds. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and it was a bit of a strange one. The guest for this show, our buddy John, who will be talking about his storytelling event Bombyx, joined us for further discussions of the event. We even included a previous Bombyx story from our friend Veronica. A short but fantastic tale about Italian boys, stolen kisses, and out-of-control gossip. And if you become a patron, it's all yours.
That was a fun bonus show to record because we got a bit silly.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, well, before we get into it, I want to do a quick shout-out here. Now, one of the cool things about having a show like this is that we're able to connect with listeners from all over the world. So I wanted to say hi to our buddy Jupito. I hope I'm saying that right. That's not actually his real name, but it's a name he uses to chat online. I met Jupito quickly a few months back. We had a very nice sit-down at Starbucks. And Jupito probably listens to the show from the furthest distance away. I haven't measured it or anything, but he lives in Venezuela. And he's Thai, but he lives in Venezuela. And as you may or may not know, Venezuela is going through their own shit show down there with coups or semi-coups or threatened invasions by America. I don't know what's going on. But I was chatting with Jupito online, and he said things are pretty uncertain down there. So take care down there, buddy, and keep your head down. Keep your head both down and up and see what's going on and stay safe. But it's cool that we're able to connect with people around the world like that, and I kind of feel bad for Jupito because he left Thailand and all the political charades here, and then he goes down to Venezuela.
Oh yeah,
it's the same kind of stuff.
That is not good luck. Maybe Jupito, he could just be bad luck.
Maybe he's a bad luck guy. I'll tell you what, Jupito, if you move to a third country, you can let us know what happens.
Yeah, and they have a military coup, then we know it's you for sure.
Yeah. Then yeah. So anyway, wherever you are, stay safe down there. And yeah, it's great to meet people like Jupito and all of our friends from around the world. All right. Well, on this episode, we are psyched to have a very good friend of both Ed and I as a guest on the show, one Mr. John Englander. Now, John is the man behind the current incarnation of Bombyx, a live storytelling event that is in its 7th year. Bombyx is a unique and very cool event that brings the rich variety of personalities in Bangkok's local and expat community together to listen to stories about everything from dogfights during the Falklands War to dining at a North Korean restaurant to stories of love, loss, and everything in between. The most recent Bombyx will happen on 24th of May, which is 2 days after this episode drops. And for better or for worse, I will be presenting at this one. So here is a conversation that Ed and I had with John about what makes Bombyx special and what goes into putting a show together.
Okay, listeners, today on the show, we have a good friend of both Greg and I, a man named Jonathan Englander, who is one of the originators of Bombyx here in Thailand. And I just wanted to welcome John to the show. John, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving me the chance to plug this.
All right. Very briefly, both Greg and I have known John for a long time. We're not going to get into John's main gig. He works as a lawyer in the entertainment industry, but he's here to talk about this, I think, quite unusual, quite unique event. So I'm just going to let John talk about where he and a friend of his got the idea and tell us maybe the origin story of Bombyx.
Sure. Bombyx started as this live storytelling event back in about 7 years ago, about, I think, the middle of 2012. And it was started by a guy that I knew independently, just through mutual friends, named Colin, who was a published poet back in the States and had been a professor at NYU. And when he moved to Thailand, kind of got handed the mantle for the Bangkok Poetry Nights, which was something that I was kind of peripherally aware of, but never participated in. It just wasn't something that I did. And I didn't know anything about live storytelling as a phenomenon. I didn't know that people, I mean, I was like telling stories because I think I'm boundlessly fascinating, but I didn't know that other people thought they were boundlessly fascinating as well. So apparently I had no idea that this was a whole phenomenon. And so I guess one day to change things up, Colin, on his own, I assume, I don't know the ultimate kind of catalyst for this, decided to have a storytelling night at Bangkok Poetry. And he called me up and said, would I tell a story at this? And he said, oh, it's, and I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what this is. I have no idea what you mean. He goes, oh, it's real people standing up and, telling a real story from their real lives about something that happened to them. He said, like the moth. And I was like, oh, like the moth.
I just see the invisible question marks.
Yeah,
popping up over your
kind
head.
of cuberting. And so as people do in this day, when people say something like that I don't know about, I nod knowingly, and then I run home and privately Google. and I started looking up the moth, and I found out that the moth has been, I guess, for some time now, a very, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, a very popular, very robust, very multifaceted kind of storytelling movement, I guess, in the States. And that was kind of my first introduction. So I went on YouTube and I went on YouTube and I searched for the moth and started. And the first story I found was the first story I ever listened to in this kind of context was this unbelievably heartbreaking story by some comedian who was telling this story. Ed's nodding. I think he's seen it. I think it's kind of famous, of this comedian whose career was taking off at the same time that his daughter was dying of cancer, I think. And it was a staggeringly effective, moving performance. But I thought, holy, this is what I have to do? So that was basically my introduction to it. And so Colin just asked me, and he sort of said, you're a yapper, so just get up there and figure it out. And that's how it all got started.
All right, well, one thing we got to get out of the way first is why it's called Bombyx, lest someone see the episode artwork and think we're talking about some weird STD or something like that. How is it spelled, and what is it, and why call it such a weird, strange name?
So the name came from Colin, and I think I share Colin's taste for words that are spelled weird and sound weird and don't have an obvious meaning. But the truth is that the Bombyx, and I'm going to get this wrong, but like the Bombyx morii, or the Bombyx, is part of the Latin name for the Thai silk moth. So it was a little nod. Yeah, clever. Perhaps too clever.
Too clever by a half.
Kind of a nod to the moth. And the moth apparently gets its name from, I believe I have this right, it started with people gathering on somebody's back porch in the country. And so the moths were sort of showing up, I guess, to the porch light. Was sort of the first audience for these stories. And so
it's like a double layer meaning.
It is a double whammy.
Wow.
Exactly.
Cool. And it's spelled Bombyx.
Bombyx. Perhaps in the long run, the weirdness, the arcane quality of the name may have hurt our marketing efforts. But for those of us who've been involved with it from the beginning, we like it.
So I'm going to cut to the chase here a minute and just say a few things. John himself is an amazing storyteller, I believe. And I think he's told, 7 or 8 stories, something like that?
Yeah, probably.
He has twisted my arm a couple times. And so I think up until now, I've actually told 3 different stories over the years. So we do, or the event has some semi-regulars. John, maybe you want to talk about exactly where you get the speakers or how the event works, how many speakers you have, and where you get them from.
I'm glad you asked that, Ed. One of the difficulties with running an event like this in a place like Bangkok is most of the people, our stories are all in English. And so we're already drawing from a relatively small pool of folks who feel that they have, the language skills to get up there and confidently tell a story. We're open to everybody, and we want everybody to come and tell stories, but all the stories are in English. So while we've had some Thai speakers, primarily it's been folks for whom English is a native language.
Right.
And so because we've got a sort of depleted pool of potential speakers, in the States, the Moth is incredibly competitive to get into. They have open mic, or what they call slams, and you've got to write down your name and hope you get called on. And then there are people who compete nationally and people who travel around telling stories. And there's the Moth Grand Slam winners, and it's a whole. I mean, it's just an incredibly vibrant scene. But here in Bangkok, we just don't have that kind of culture, or the phenomena hasn't found that kind of purchase here. And so really what it's supposed to be is a venue for people to get up there and tell their stories. And, stories range from 5 minutes from the really economical to the 20 minutes to the ungoverned ramblers. We try to keep them a little in check. But it's supposed to be a venue. We're just supposed to be kind of creating an opportunity for people to get up there and tell their stories. Yeah. But because we will kind of book an event or announce an event, we're then committed to getting storytellers, and it's often...
It's all a bit of a scramble too.
It's a hard date. Yeah. I often think about sort of compare my efforts to recruit to either the old ways that Mayor Daley would get the Democratic vote out in Chicago with kind of a combination of shots of whiskey and billy clubs and whatnot, or the way the British Army kept itself stacked in fresh recruits. But the truth is that I'm often just pleading people to show up so that we can put the event on as scheduled. And so we've come down to a kind of a core group of about 4 or 5 folks who are often willing to stand up and tell a story. But if anybody out there is listening and wants to get in touch, we'd be super happy to grow that pool. The truth is we're running out of stories. We're bored of each other's stories. We want fresh stories. So
it's interesting because what you said about how it's challenging finding people is very true, because I always think of that old Seinfeld joke about how the number 1 fear of people is public speaking, and the number 2 fear is death. So at a funeral, statistically speaking, people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Right. And as a former comedian, yes, it is challenging. But the charm of this and the authenticity of this comes from it being just regular people.
No, and it's right. And so I think everybody has this fear of speaking. And when I recruit people, I kind of wait. I tell them, and I work very closely with people on their stories. I really try to craft it so that they're confident in their material. I rehearse the material with them, and we'll tweak it, and we'll work through it together and everything. And then usually about the night before the performance, this actually just happened, the last one with one of the speakers who I worked with. I was like, how are you doing? She's like, I'm incredibly nervous. I said, okay, now you're in the club. So now the final door will be open. The final truth will be revealed, which is that this is shit your pants scary. This is really, really frightening stuff. Like the U.S. Army, I omit that part from the recruiting spiel, right? Like it is a calculated pitch to get you here, but now you're in the club and it's too late and you can't turn back. So I think that we are dealing with, it's a very widespread fear. But when you couple that with sort of an ingrained culture resistance to being the center of attention, to standing up, to calling yourself out. And of course, the most interesting stories often are stories where things go wrong, where you're maybe the hero now, but you're the anti-hero in the moment. And that's not a light in which people are always necessarily comfortable painting themselves,
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the night. Usually, John and back in the day, Colin manages to recruit anywhere from 6 to maybe 8 storytellers. Right. And it's usually divided into 2 groups, like 3 people and then an intermission and then 3 more people. And as John mentioned, the stories range from anywhere from 5 minutes to maybe a maximum of 15 minutes. And I guess this would be a contradiction, but if there's one common theme is that there's a great diversity in the stories, even when there is a theme. So depending on the Bombyx night, occasionally John will have a theme for the night, and each story is supposed to fit the theme. But people are so clever that even though there is a unifying theme, the stories tend to be incredibly diverse. As an example, one of the stories I told, the theme was called Stranger in a Strange Land. That was just the theme. And the story I told was about my bizarre experiences with my fiance, now my wife, and my mother-in-law when we went back to the States for my wedding. So my wife, my fiance, had been there before, but my mother-in-law had never been to the States, and she didn't speak much English. And so while getting ready for my wedding, I had all these crazy experiences with my then fiance and my mother-in-law. And so I told that story. So I'm telling a story about my wedding. And we had a Thai American speaker telling a fantastic story about traveling alone on a train, I think outside of Rome. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a midnight train, like from Rome to Florence or something like this.
The upcoming event, which we've told you about already, actually is kind of a dealer's choice. So people can tell virtually any story they want. But sometimes there's a theme. But even when there's a theme, there's a lot of diversity in the stories.
Yeah, I over the years. So if we go back to that first event, and I went again. The only story I had heard was this absolutely soul crushing one of this comedian about his most beloved daughter dying and his career taking off. And so I felt like I rummaged through my emotional baggage, and I wound up telling. The first story I ever told was about kind of attending my father's funeral, but having to go kind of quote unquote disguised or pretending to be an old family friend and not as his son because of the fractured nature.
Good Lord.
Of my family.
Sounds hilarious.
Well, this was actually great. It was that story night really did. I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but it really did change my life. That was my Tony Robbins fire walk. That was like it really did change things for me, because one of the things that I've learned, and this is something I try to teach all my students, right? Always put one in the brain. Then I try to, that's a Miller's Crossing. You can cut that out. But one of the moments that I learned from that, so I have this very heavy story, and I talked before I told it, I was terrified. And I had written this story out as a short story. It was like 40 ponderous pages of just grief and anguish.
Wow.
And I was like, this is not going to work. And so the first thing I said was I have to completely invert the humor pathos ratio here. So I have to go from like 39 pages of angst and 1 page of chuckles to I got to mix it up. And somebody... a friend of mine back home who knew about this sort of stuff said, look, if you're going to talk about death, you got to give your audience permission to laugh. So I stood up there and I opened the story and I said, I'm going to tell a story about my father dying and going to his funeral as an old family friend. And I started with his death, which was he collapsed at his home in Toronto unexpectedly, whether he had a stroke or heart attack. He gasped for about 15 minutes. He had the strength to call his wife's name, and then he was dead. And just like now, I hadn't expected this moment. I leaned over to the microphone and I said, don't worry, it gets much funnier from here. And the audience laughed. And it was not a scripted line. It was not anything I had prepared for. I told that opening, and I was struck, and I guess people who perform this seems obvious to them, but it was new to me, was how much you feel the audience, how much you know the audience. And I felt like I had just tossed like a dozen lead X-ray aprons on them, and they were all like, "Oh my god!" and so I just gave them that permission. It was the most, and from that point on, I just felt in control of my material. And I'm sure if I heard it now, I'm sure I goofed it up. I'm sure the wrong details, and I didn't land the punchline, and yada yada. But it was. I got off that stage and I was like, oh my God, that was incredible. And I became kind of an apostle for the whole thing. And I was like, everyone should have this experience. It was fucking unbelievable. So that's where I started this. But as time has gone on, of course, we only have so many momentous events in our life, and we've only had so many speakers. So my stories have covered things a good deal more quotidian or pedestrian or whatever you want to call it.
The one story you told about running out of Fruit Loops was tragic.
No,
I'm just kidding. There was no story like
no,
that.
But I did tell a story about my first trip to Thailand and a tragic encounter with a Big Mac on Sealam Road that
ended with you running to
that ended with me running home and showering and leaving a package of stained clothes roughly the size of a dead baby outside my hotel room. So they're not, it's not all this great heavy stuff.
That's what I wanted to say. And it's interesting because a lot of these kind of things, because one of the things that I've noticed is that even in the stories that are bittersweet or sad, like I remember a few years ago, Wes told a story of his dad dying, which was very emotional and it was silent, but every story is funny, and it's not like a situation where someone says thank you for listening to me and people are just like, oh my God, that was like, it's a very much a group dynamic, and you get to know the person in the short time they're on stage, and it's
very intimate.
It's intimate and friendly, and everyone's there enjoying it.
It's very different from stand-up, both in the affect of what the person is telling, because the emphasis isn't solely on humor, but it's also in the posture of the speaker, not their physical posture, but somebody gets up there and basically they're saying, this is something that happened to me. I hope you find it interesting.
No, you said this stems from The Moth, which takes place in New York, and I think we can all agree, you can probably confirm as a former New Yorker, that it's one of the most vibrant, dynamic cities in the world.
Once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker.
Yes, exactly. Well, Bangkok also is a vibrant, dynamic city, but what does Bangkok bring to this? Why Bangkok? What does the community offer? Okay,
so one of the things that we've really tried to do over the years with this is we really curate this event. We don't do an open mic. We're very clear to people that they have to take their responsibilities to the audience seriously. If you want to get up there, that's fantastic. Respect your audience, practice your story, and whatnot. I would say that there's a shortage of these kinds of venues for people, these kinds of events. And so one reason I think that Bangkok as a environment kind of contributes to this is that you can sometimes forget how diverse Bangkok really is until people get up there and share the more granular aspects of their life. And then you're like, holy crap. I sat next to that guy at a bar before. No idea he was like that, And I think it is a city that by its reputation and by its, the nature of the immigration rules has allowed a fair population of oddballs to kind of congregate here over the years. And
we've done entire podcast episodes about if you have to be a strange weirdo to live in Bangkok. And generally speaking, the answer is probably a little bit.
And you don't need that many oddballs to make for an interesting evening, right? And one thing I'm really proud of is that our speakers have really, over the years, by and large, really taken care with their stories, that people who come out and people who are hungry for this kind of thing, when they come together, there's this like, wow, we found something special. We found something cool.
Right.
It's feeding a part of themselves that isn't readily fed here. So, while we do benefit from the diversity and the strangeness and the lax immigration rules here to populate our evenings, we conversely like to think that maybe we give back and we make Bangkok just a little bit more interesting or a little bit weirder, in its own way.
And I think everyone takes it seriously. The people speaking take it seriously.
Yes.
The audience takes it seriously.
Yes.
And I think everyone cherishes that.
Well, let me say this before John gives you his sales pitch for why you should attend the event this week. Let me say this. All the listeners know I've been in Thailand a long time, and I've made what I think is a good life here. I've got a good group of friends. I've got a great wife. I like my life here. But the simple truth is there's only about 3 or 4 really special kind of different things that I found in Thailand that I really feel like, wow, like if I left, I might not be able to find this where I was going, or if I went back home. And one of them is Bombyx. I absolutely fell in love with this event. I pretty much went as a favor to John. I had no idea what he was talking about, and he was like, please come to this thing. And I just immediately fell in love with it. So, that's my best sales pitch is it's one of the things that has kept me in Bangkok all these years, for sure.
So our next show is going to be on this Friday, May 24th. At WTF bar, which is off of Sukhumvit Soi 51. If you go in 51, there's a little mini soy to the left.
50 meters
when you
in.
come in, yeah, about 50 meters down. Turn left, and you'll see the throng.
The thousands of people outside.
You'll know. And really excited about this event, actually, because despite all the kvetching I just gave you about arm twisting and not getting this, using the same people over in the well running try and yada yada. I think actually we have so many speakers that we're still deciding the speakers list, but we have 2 Thai speakers in English, but born and raised here in Thailand. I think we have a Vietnam vet, and as a very special delight, after years of nagging and badgering and bullying and shaming of all varieties, we will have our very own Greg Jorgensen.
Yes. Well, I am unshameable. That's why it didn't happen until now.
Now you tell me.
No, I'm really looking forward to it. I hope my story is okay. I've chosen for my story something that I think is really funny, and it's my experience back in the day when I used to be a bit actor / extra in Thai commercials and stuff, usually playing the bad guy or the bodyguard or something like that. And there's a very strange photo of me in a very, very tight pink leotard that my son saw and asked me about, and I had to explain it to him. So I'm going to tell the story of how this photo came to be, which is, I think it's kind of an amusing, frustrating story and an interesting insight into dealing with Thailand as a sort of wannabe actor.
I've seen the picture that Greg is talking about, and if there are families out there, it will be pixelated for everybody's benefit. And as Greg said, you get to know something, or Ed said, you really get to know people when they tell you the stories. You will learn something about Greg from looking at this picture. I hasten to assure you. Do with that what you will.
Well, thanks for coming on, John. I think it's a great thing. It's a very interesting thing. It's a very intimate thing, and it's something that the people who are involved are very proud of, as they should be. And I think also it speaks a lot to how Bangkok is changing, because there's this thing, there's things like the Aristotle's Cafe, the stand-up comedy scene in Bangkok is exploding. There's a lot of new dynamic events run by interesting dynamic people, and Bombyx is one of them, and you are one of them. I think it speaks well to how Bangkok's social strata will change over the next 3-5 years.
Look, I think we've all been here. I think I'm the newbie in the room at 15 years here, and I think we can already see, right? It's the interest in things like this. I think that there's a much broader Thai interest in things that I used to I don't know. Can we talk in these terms on the show? Like, I feel like if you look at food, it's an obvious example, but the things that I just kind of considered farang, I now go to restaurants that like the Bangkok Bagel Bakery, and it's all Thais. I feel like things that I used to consider sort of my unique things, or the things that I liked and I didn't expect to like, are really gaining traction.
Let me close by just saying, if you are a listener who is an expat, Greg and I know that you are bored. We know that you're bored of Bangkok. We know that you're looking for something new to do, something to reinvigorate your Thai life. And I'm telling you, Bombyx is just the medicine you need. Trust me. Check it out.
Yeah, if you do come on out, and you be careful not to make eye contact, because if you look at all interested, I will start the high pressure sales tactics. Keep your eyes down, enjoy the show, and then run away. It'd be my advice, because you may find yourself on stage at the next event otherwise.
All right. Well, thanks, man. It's a great event with good people and always great opportunity to make new friends. So thanks for coming on.
No, thank you guys.
I will see you
Awesome.
there, and
I'll see you there.
Wish me luck.
And just don't wear the leotard, and we'll be all will be copacetic, my friend.
All right. Cool.
Cool. All right.
I'll tell you this about our buddy John. He's never boring.
No. I almost sometimes don't like talking to John because he's so literate and verbose and intelligent. He's the only person I know that regularly uses words that I don't understand. I don't know that. Like, he'll say something, I'm like, I don't know what that word means.
Well, I can definitely second that. I got to be honest. I'm kind of a word guy. I'm obviously not the best out there, but I'm pretty good with words. But like just last week, John posted something on Facebook and he used this word that I never heard before. The word was petrichor, Petrichor, and I had to look it up. And it's a word meaning...
Sounds like a dinosaur or something.
Yeah, petrichor. It means the smell of rain.
Only John would know that.
That's right, dude. Anyway,
Yeah.
he's a great storyteller, and actually you're a great storyteller. So anyone out there, if you are in Bangkok in 2 days, you need to get out to WTF and see Bombyx.
Yeah, I hope it goes well. Fingers crossed. If you want to see me either completely own the evening or crash and burn, you know where to go. But
Either way.
yeah, either way, you're guaranteed to be entertained. But it is a great event. John's a great guy, and he puts a lot of work into making this really authentic and really cool. And I'm glad it's going on because it's one more thing that, like you said, Ed, it's one more thing that keeps us here.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, and that's where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept it as just a part of the crazy tapestry that makes up this crazy city. And this week, man, it's all you.
Okay, so this is something that you and I have totally talked about before, but I don't think it's come up as a love, loathe, or live with. Okay, so
All right.
So I'm just curious about your opinion. I really don't know what you think about this.
All right.
So Greg, what do you think about adult Thai women's penchant for childish or maybe teenage girlish things like Hello Kitty or stuffed animals or whatever it is, like adult Thai women? I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Is it charming? Is it charming? Is it cute? Like, what do you think about it?
Wow, this is a difficult one because my first instinct is to say that I loathe it. I work in a big office, and sometimes you'll walk by someone's desk, and it's like a 34-year-old woman, and she's hugging like a Lilo and Stitch doll, and and it's
a very Thai thing. It's a very Thai
Yeah.
thing. It's like Thai women like love stuffed animals. They love like Hello Kitty. It's like it has some charm. It has some charm.
It has some charm if you're 9. I mean, this is what kids do back in the West. But yeah, like you see a woman's car and it has like, a Hello Kitty license plate. The worst one. Have you seen those cars with eyelashes?
No, I have not.
Imagine like women's fake eyelashes, but they're huge, and you stick them on the headlights of your car.
Oh my God.
To make it look like little cute eyes.
Okay,
I'm going loathe.
I was like, I'm going loathe on eyelashes, headlight eyelashes. I'm going loathe on that.
Yeah, I mean, but it's really different because, like I said, my first reaction is to say, "Oh God, this is so ridiculous. This is how children act in the West." But then, I love Thai women, so they are super cute and quirky and funny and neat. So, if someone does that and they're normal in all other respects, I guess it's not a big deal.
So maybe it's a live with. Maybe you're in the middle then.
Yeah, you're right. This is my first live with. I don't necessarily like it, but it does. I think unless it's you pull it back, you lift up the rock and it reveals a whole other bunch of mental problems, and I guess it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, I'll live with it. I've learned to live with it.
It's funny. Sure. I think I've got the exact same reaction. Like on an intellectual level, it doesn't make sense and it's kind of hard to believe, but it is cute and charming and nice. It's like warm and cuddly. It's like, and so it's like I can't. It's something that I like want to hate, but I just can't hate it.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd, but it's not at all offensive. It's totally innocuous, so it's hard to loathe something.
Yeah,
like
it's the opposite of offensive, actually. It's like the opposite. It's like a cuddly puppy. It can't be offensive.
That's right. That's right.
So funny. Okay, before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our lovely patrons. As you know, we don't run ads or have sponsors, so we really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. If you want to learn more, just head to bangkokpodcast.com/support. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We are very polite, and if you write, we will answer.
Yeah, you can also find each episode on YouTube. We're up to 160-something subscribers now, which is pretty cool. You can also follow us online, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me on Twitter, where I am BKKGreg. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.
I really want to mention that I got an 800 on the Jerry, but that's so geeky, that's so nerdy. I don't know if
I'll
I
put it in the tag on the end.
I don't. Well,
So what you're saying is you're real good with the words, but even then, John still outwords you.
yeah, that's basically right.